Do you remember the last time you sat in the rear-facing third-row seat and made funny faces at the drivers behind you? Once making up 10% of the market with 62 different models in 1976, these land yachts have now almost vanished. Join me as we travel back in time to explore the rise and fall of the greatest car in U.S. history. From the train station to the hands of Henry Ford. Turn back the wheels of time even further to a very different America in the early 20th century. It was an era when the pulse of the nation did not beat to the roar of IV-8 engines, but to the echoes of train whistles and the chugging of steel wheels rolling on tracks. Close your eyes and imagine standing at a crowded station in 1910. The air is thick with the smell of dusty coal and the bustle of people laughing and talking. When you step off the train, your luggage is not the lightweight polycarbonate rolling suitcases of today, but giant wood trunks wrapped in leather and brass heavy chests containing an entire estate of clothes and personal items for long journeys. In those days, the concept of Uber or Grab was science fiction, and even convenient sedan taxis were not yet common enough to be waiting for you at the station gates. What you needed was a vehicle large enough, powerful enough, and rugged enough to carry a large family along with that pile of bulky trunks from the station, all the way to your doorstep or to remote secluded resorts. In that dusty historical context and urgent practical need, the predecessor of the station wagon was quietly born. Initially, people called them by a very rustic name that reflected their function: depot hacks. The word depot means station, while hacks was a slang term borrowed from the hackney horse carriages once popular in London, referring to low-cost rental vehicles often used to transport goods or budget passengers. In reality, these depot hacks were merely trucks crudely modified from the chassis of early automobiles. People installed long wooden benches along the body for passengers to sit on and left a large space in the middle, or at the rear, to pile mountains of luggage from the train station. They were not glamorous, not smooth, and certainly lacked air conditioning or radios for entertainment. They were simply labor tools, diligent pack horses serving the increasing mobility needs of pre-industrial American society. You can imagine them like primitive tuk-tuks or passenger buses, but carrying the seeds of a future lifestyle revolution. And when mentioning automotive history, we cannot fail to mention Henry Ford, the man who completely changed the way the world moves. He was also the one who accidentally laid the first bricks for the wagon empire in a very unique and economically calculated way. Around 1910, at a price of about $700, a significant amount of money at the time, Ford began selling bare Model T chassis to independent manufacturers. Henry Ford was a genius of assembly line production, and he understood that customizing complex wooden bodies would slow down the lightning-fast assembly process he was building. Therefore, he chose the solution of selling the chassis, engine, and wheels while leaving the bodywork to hundreds of craft shops across America to create freely. The very scarcity of industrial standards and the freedom in design at that time created an explosion of artistry and diversity. Talented carpenters at carriage shops used their master woodworking skills to build custom wooden bodies onto the Model T chassis, creating unique vehicles with a strong personal touch. Can you believe that in 1909, the United States had up to 551 different automobile manufacturers? A staggering number compared to the mere 3 giants remaining in Detroit today. This incredible diversity created the era of wooden-bodied cars, also known as the artistic and romantic Woody. The transition from the name depot hack to station wagon occurred naturally somewhere between 1923 and 1929. The name station wagon clearly reflects its origins, a wagon used at the station, but it gradually took on a broader meaning as a multi-purpose vehicle. And by 1929, when Ford officially launched the Model A station wagon, produced by the company itself, the name officially entered the dictionary and American cultural history. This was an important milestone, marking the point where major automakers began to realize the potential of this vehicle line and no longer wanted to lose market share to private custom shops. Entering the 1930s, an interesting reversal of value took place in American society. Wood, originally a cheap and readily available material, suddenly became a symbol of luxury and status. Woody cars at that time actually sold for higher price than standard cars because of exquisite handcrafted beauty. Owning a wood-paneled wagon meant you were someone with refined aesthetic taste, more importantly enough wealth to pay for its maintenance. And Henry Ford was even so obsessed with wood quality that he opened a dedicated plant in Iron Mountain, Michigan in 1936, just to produce wagon bodies. Interestingly, he owned vast forests covering thousands of acres near Lake Superior, just to provide the best types of wood such as maple birch and mahogany for this factory. However, behind the glamorous beauty of those wood grains was a maintenance nightmare that only those who owned them could understand. Wood is a living material. It shrinks when dry and expands when wet. It is affected by sun, rain, and time. Owners had to constantly apply varnish, frequently tighten loose bolt joints due to wood shrinkage, and check for termites periodically. Moving into 1935, Chevrolet bravely tested the first all-steel wagon named the Suburban Carryall. Technically, it was more durable, safer, and easier to maintain, but it failed in sales because the public was still too enamored with the expensive and aristocratic look of wood. People were not yet ready to give up romance in exchange for practicality. It was not until after World War II when steel stamping technology advanced significantly and user mindsets began to change that a true revolution broke out. In 1946, Willys Jeep introduced the first mass-produced all-steel station wagon for families. Although made of steel, user psychology had not completely shifted, so they still had to paint faux wood grain on the exterior to please tastes and create a sense of familiarity. And by 1949, when Plymouth launched the all-steel Suburban, the era of real wood cars officially closed. Real wood disappeared, but its soul remained in the form of faux wood vinyl decals, opening a more glorious new chapter for this vehicle line. The golden era of mobile living rooms, 1950s to 1970s. After the gunfire of World War II faded into the past, America entered a period of prosperity and optimism unprecedented in human history. Soldiers returning home from the battlefields of Europe and the Pacific brought with them a burning desire for a peaceful and happy life with their families. They started families, bought houses, and created the largest baby boom generation in history, a generation that would shape American culture and economics for the next half-century. Along with the explosion of model suburbs like Levittown with houses featuring lush green lawns, white picket fences, and the vast interstate highway system initiated by President Eisenhower, the need for a versatile family car became more urgent than ever. That was when the station wagon ascended the throne and began its brilliant golden age that lasted for 3 decades. Statistics from this period tell a story of absolute, indisputable dominance. From a modest market share of less than 3% in 1950, the wagon line rose strongly to occupy nearly 17% of the market by the end of that decade. In fact, in 1958, the best-selling model for Plymouth was not a luxury sedan or a fast sports coupe, but the station wagon. Throughout the 1960s and early 1970s, if you were a typical middle-class family in America, you certainly had a wagon in your garage. It was not just a means of transportation, it was the 5th or 6th member of the family, a witness to all the joys and sorrows of daily life. The wagon became the mobile headquarters for all American family activities. In the morning, it took Dad to work in the afternoon, it joined Mom to pick up the kids from school, or go to Little League baseball practice. On weekends, it transformed into a giant cargo hauler at supermarkets filled with brown paper bags containing groceries for the whole week. And most especially during summer vacations, the wagon became the ship that carried the whole family cross-country to go camping, visit grandparents, or explore majestic national parks. The image of a wagon, loaded with luggage on the roof cruising along Route 66, became an immortal symbol of American style, freedom, and happiness. The most special feature, and also what makes us remember the wagons of this era, was their overwhelming massive size. They were likened to land yachts or mobile living rooms, and this comparison was not an exaggeration at all. Try to close your eyes and imagine the 1998 Ford Country Squire. It was over 218 inches long, which is more than 5.5 meters. To help you visualize, this figure is even larger than the length of a modern full-size SUV like the Chevy Tahoe or Ford Expedition today. This spaciousness allowed designers to be creative with the interior, turning the car into a true living space rather than just a place to sit. We had 9 passenger cars with 3 rows of wide seats upholstered in leather or fabric as soft as a living room sofa. But the most legendary thing, the thing that is deeply etched into the memories of millions of American children, and perhaps yours as well, was the rear-facing third-row seat. This was the children's private domain, completely separated from the control and strict gazes of the parent sitting up front. Their siblings often scrambled to huddle together with luggage, pets, and toys. It was the place where mischievous pranks and childhood arguments took place, and especially the game of making funny faces to tease drivers behind them through the large rear glass. GM even created the clamshell tailgate style where the rear glass slid into the roof and the lower door slid onto the floor, creating a magical, completely open space that would make any child wide-eyed with surprise and delight. 1976 marked the most brilliant peak of this vehicle line before tragedy struck. American consumers at that time had up to 62 different wagon models to choose from, ranging from large and small automakers and from budget to luxury. Total sales reached nearly 1 million units, accounting for 10% of the entire U.S. auto market. A dream figure for any vehicle line, automakers competed to release names that sounded catchy and aristocratic, such as Ford's Country Squire Chrysler's Town, and Country, or Oldsmobile's Vista Cruiser, with its unique glass roof allowing for sky viewing. Although the exterior wood layer at this point was only vinyl decals stuck onto metal, a cheap simulation of a glorious past, it was still a strong affirmation of the owner's success. I made it, I have a happy family and a full life. And lying beneath that long hood were big block V8 engines, with displacements of over 400 cubic inches full of power and ready to drink gasoline like water to swallow up every highway, providing a solid and powerful driving feel. Among those watching this video was anyone once a child, sitting in the way back seat playing the license plate bingo game during long family trips? Please share that wonderful childhood memory in the comments section below. I would love to hear the stories of your trips. Oil shock. The burden of bulkiness. When everything seemed to be at its peak of glory, when station wagons were still proudly rolling across American roads like kings and queens of the highway, a shocking geopolitical event occurred. This very turning point changed the landscape of the auto industry and the fate of these family cars forever. It was October 1973 when the Yom Kippur War broke out in the Middle East. In retaliation for U.S. support for Israel, the Organization of Arab Petroleum, exporting countries OAPEC declared a comprehensive oil embargo against the United States and its allies. For those who lived through that period, you surely haven't forgotten the feeling of extreme panic upon waking up and seeing that the world had turned upside down overnight. In a short time, the price of crude oil on the world market increased nearly 300% from $3 a barrel to nearly $12. But the problem lay not only in escalating prices, but also in an unprecedented, severe scarcity. Americans who were used to driving freely without a thought and with fuel as cheap as dirt, for the first time in their lives had to experience the sight of queuing for hours at gas stations. Lines of cars snaked across many city blocks waiting in fatigue, anxiety, and sometimes anger just to buy a little precious fuel. In many states, gas stations had to apply strict rationing measures, such as selling gas based on odd-even license plates, and each person was only allowed to buy a maximum of 10 gallons of gas at a time. Full-size wagons are often known as notorious gas guzzlers or thirsty dinosaurs. With large displacement as 8 engines heavy weight due to body-on-frame construction, and poor boxy aerodynamics like bricks, they achieved a modest fuel consumption of about 10 to 12 miles per gallon under the best conditions. When gas prices quadrupled and finding fuel became as difficult as finding gold, the dream car in the garage suddenly became a financial burden, an anchor dragging down the family economy. From symbols of the American dream and prosperity, they became symbols of excessive waste and the obsolescence of a bygone era. Families who were once proud of their country squire now began to look at it with hesitation and worry every time the fuel needle dropped. Weekend getaways were cut back, cross-country travel plans were canceled. The car that once brought freedom now became a cage of confinement because the operating costs were too high. Alongside the shock from consumers, the financial problems of automakers in Detroit also began to reveal serious cracks. Although wagon sales remained high in previous years, the reality was that producing a wagon was much more expensive than a regular sedan. You needed a longer chassis, more glass, a larger roof, a reinforced suspension to handle heavier loads, and a complex, expensive tailgate mechanism. However, automakers could not sell them at a price too high compared to the corresponding sedan version because customers would not accept it. This caused profit margins on each wagon to shrink significantly. When sales began to plummet uncontrollably in 1974 and 1975 after the oil shock, the economic puzzle became more difficult than ever for the Big Three, consisting of GM, Ford, and Chrysler. They were struggling to maintain profits while the market was shifting towards small, fuel-efficient cars from Japan like Honda or Toyota. It did not stop there. In 1972, the U.S. government enacted new, stricter emission standards, forcing manufacturers to redesign engines. The powerful V8 machines that were once the pride of American engineering were now choked of their power to meet environmental standards. Compression ratios were lowered, and catalytic converters were added, making engines run weaker and more sluggishly. Yet, ironically, they still consumed a massive amount of fuel. Chrysler was the first to see the end of the party. In 1978, in a desperate effort to restructure and cut costs, they made the shocking decision to completely kill off their full-size wagon line. This was the first flare signaling the collapse of an automotive empire that once dominated American streets, paving the way for radical changes in the following decade. The perfect replacement called minivan. The history of the auto industry always contains unexpected and ironic turns where the end of one is the beginning of another. It was Chrysler the first to abandon the full-size wagon game due to the crisis who created the finishing blow to this vehicle line with a completely new invention. In the early 1980s, Chrysler was on the brink of bankruptcy. Lee Iacocca, the legendary newly appointed CEO who was once dubbed the father of the Ford Mustang, understood that the company needed a revolutionary product, a massive hit to save the situation, not just incremental improvements. He needed a family car of the future, a car that redefined the way Americans moved. And so, in 1984, the world witnessed the birth of the minivan with two famous names, the Dodge Caravan and the Plymouth Voyager. Minivan appeared as a perfect and calculated solution to the family car puzzle of the time. Look at its superiority over its wagon predecessor to see why it was so successful. Minivan provided a more spacious interior with a higher ceiling, helping occupants feel much more airy. You could walk between rows of seats, something no wagon could do. But the magic was that all that space sat on a shorter overall length, making maneuvering and parking in cramped supermarket lots or family garages easier than ever. Those previously long wagons were always a nightmare for housewives when backing up, but Minivan completely solved that problem. The sliding side door design was an absolute plus a functional revolution that made picking up and dropping off children safe and convenient. No more worrying about kids carelessly opening doors and denting the car next to them in tight parking lots. No more leaning out to close heavy car doors. Furthermore, by being built on a front-wheel drive passenger car platform, borrowed from the K-Car line minivan, provided a smooth, light, and easier driving feel than traditional bulky vans based on truck chassis. The higher seating position also helps drivers, especially women, have better visibility and a greater sense of safety in traffic. Most importantly, in the difficult economic context of the early 80s, they had a much more accessible price point than the increasingly expensive and complex wagons. Chrysler created a magic box containing everything an American family needed: utility economy and affordability. Immediately, minivan became a sellout phenomenon at dealerships and saved Chrysler from a near certain loss. But there was another important psychological factor that few mentioned, but carried immense weight: the issue of image and generational conflict. By the 1990s, the baby boomer generation, those children who once sat in the wayback seats years ago, had grown up and begun starting their own families. In their eyes, wood-paneled station wagons were no longer symbols of luxury. Instead, they were associated with the image of their parents. They represented the dull, conservative, and outdated suburban generation values that young people wanted to reject to assert their own identities. No one wanted to drive the exact same car as their parents. Although the minivan was later labeled as a soccer mom car at the time of its 1984 launch, it was something fresh, practical, and completely different from the past. It represented modernity, intelligence, and calculation. The explosion of the minivan pushed the station wagon into the dark corners of showrooms. Wagon sales continued to plummet uncontrollably. Automakers took turns cutting models to make room on production lanes for minivans. Ford and GM, although trying to hold on with models like the Caprice wagon or the Roadmaster final efforts to retain past glory, could not resist the trend of the times. The car that was once the king of the suburbs now became the choice of eccentric traditionalists or those who could not keep up with trends. Minivan triumphed not just through functionality, but by hitting the psychological desire for change in a new generation. A generation that wanted to write its own family story in a different kind of car. In your opinion, was it the practicality of the minivan that ended the wagon era, or simply because we did not want to drive cars that looked like our parents? Which side are you on? Please leave your opinion. Transition to SUV and crossover. If the minivan was the first punch that dazed the station wagon and caused it to lose its unique position, then the rise of the SUV sport utility vehicle was the final finishing blow for this vehicle line in America. The same year the minivan was born, another name also quietly appeared: the Jeep Cherokee XJ. After that was the real explosion with the appearance of the Ford Explorer in 1990. These vehicles completely changed the definition of a family car and the way Americans spent their money. Buyers were not merely buying a means of transport from point A to point B, they were buying a lifestyle, a dream of freedom. SUV brought an image of rugged adventure and the ability to conquer any wild terrain. Car advertisements at that time were full of images of SUVs climbing mountains, wading through streams, crossing deserts, or traversing dense forests. even though in reality 99% of SUV owners never drove off the asphalt of mall parking lots or schools. But the feeling of sitting in a high-clearance four-wheel drive vehicle that looked aggressive and powerful still made people feel more secure and excited. It completely erased the dull housewife or boring diaper dad feel that wagons or minivans provided. Driving an SUV made you look cooler, more individualistic, and more active. It allowed suburban drivers to feel like an explorer Indiana Jones even when they were just picking up kids from school or going shopping. Besides psychological factors and clever marketing, a little-known policy factor also played an equally important role in this spectacular overthrow. That was the CAFE, Corporate Average Fuel Economy Standards. This regulation was set by the US government to control the fuel consumption of automakers. However, it had a fatal loophole, or more accurately, a legal gap. This standard set very strict fuel consumption requirements for passenger cars, including wagons, but was much looser for the light trucks line, the segment into which SUVs were classified, because they were considered work vehicles. This loophole created a massive economic incentive for automakers. They realized that instead of spending billions of dollars researching fuel-efficient engines for wagons to meet strict standards, they could focus on producing SUVs based on light truck chassis, comfortably equipping them with large engines, selling them at high prices, and reaping huge profits without worrying about emission penalties. SUV became the golden goose for Detroit with sky-high profit margins, while the wagon was abandoned mercilessly because it was no longer economically efficient. However, the question arises, did the station wagon truly die, or is it just disguised in another form to survive? Look at the crossovers commonly seen everywhere on the streets today, like the Honda CR-V Toyota, RAV4, or Ford Edge. In terms of technical essence, they are actually just wagons with raised ground clearance. They have unibody construction, a rear hatch that opens upward, and a luggage compartment integrated with a passenger cabin. Just like a wagon, not a body-on-frame construction like traditional SUVs. A typical and excellent example of this smart transformation is Subaru. In the mid-90s, when sales of the legacy wagon line dropped seriously and faced the risk of being discontinued, instead of giving up, Subaru took a bold, strategic step. They took the legacy wagon, raised the ground clearance by a few inches, added rugged plastic cladding around the body, painted it in 2 tones, named it the Outback, and called it the world's first sport utility wagon. The result was a resounding success that saved the entire brand and created a completely new segment. Americans still bought wagons and still loved their utility as long as you did not call them a wagon, and made them look a bit like an off-road vehicle, so they felt they were driving an adventurous car. By 1996, when GM officially killed off the Buick, Roadmaster and Chevrolet Caprice wagon, the last full-size American wagons with V8 engines and rear-wheel drive, officially faded into the past. It was a sad end for an iconic vehicle line, but also the beginning of today's dominant crossover era, where the practicality of the wagon is combined with the look of an SUV. If American automakers revived a true wagon, would you be willing to buy it instead of a tall SUV? Emotional legacy and lessons. The research process for this video made us realize something quite interesting. Most of us never truly lived fully in the golden age of the station wagon. By the time we grew up, those cars had gradually disappeared from the streets. Occasionally, one can still catch a glimpse of a few survivors, an old wagon in a supermarket parking lot, or someone's aged Volvo still rolling along diligently. Every time you see one, it feels like encountering an endangered species. What made the station wagon special was never its performance. They guzzled gas, drove heavily, and to be honest, many were not beautiful at all, but the true value of the wagon lay in what it represented. It was the quintessential family car in an era when the concept of family had a very clear shape. Parents, a few kids, and a dog going along on every trip. Wagon was where life happened. It was the space for childhood arguments on the way to a relative's house. It was where the whole family learned geography through impromptu games on the highway. It was the first moment of freedom when kids sat in the rear-facing seats making faces at cars behind them. No seatbelts or airbags, just a thin layer of glass separating them from the world. It is amazing to think that such cars were once so common. The wagon reflected a very American spirit of optimism, where people were willing to create quirky ideas just because they brought joy. Attaching faux wood to the body, placing seats backward, or accepting high fuel consumption during difficult times all stemmed from a simple belief that life should be enjoyed. When the station wagon disappeared, we did not just lose a car style, we lost pure practicality. A true wagon could carry the whole family luggage, camping gear, even large planks with affordable costs and incredible flexibility. We also lost character. Each wagon used to have its own identity, from budget to luxury. Today, many modern models look so similar that it's hard to tell them apart. Perhaps the greatest thing we lost is an emotional connection to a simpler time where the family car was merely a vehicle to serve the family. Not a lifestyle statement, not a status symbol, just an honest companion on the long journeys of life. Station wagon may have faded into the past, disappearing from sales charts and glamorous dealerships, but the values it represents have never faded in the American mind. It is the memory of cross-country trips filled with laughter, the innocent games of children in the backseat, and the smell of gasoline mixed with the scent of hot vinyl under the summer sun. Looking back at the journey of the station wagon, we see not just the history of a car, but a part of American history, appearing simpler, more optimistic, and warmer. Standing before this colossal Art Deco vehicle, 3 meters tall and 10 meters long, you might assume it's an engineering marvel of 1953. GM created a fleet of 12 future liners showcasing microwave ovens and jet engines. But why did the drivers call it a nightmare? In this video, we will uncover the untold secrets about this icon, the role of concept cars. Imagine yourself standing in the mid-1950s, a decade when America moved with a proud and confident stride, completely liberated from the economic hardships of wartime. It was a time when progress was not just a concept, but a tangible reality, present in every corner of life. In the skies, jet planes were constantly breaking speed records, pushing the limits of aeronautical engineering to new heights. In laboratories, scientists successfully harnessed nuclear energy, opening new vistas of unlimited power sources. And of course, the space race was starting to heat up, promising spectacular journeys to the stars, turning science fiction stories into national objectives. In this optimistic and promising environment, the automotive industry was no longer merely about manufacturing transportation. It became a stage for showcasing the future. And on that stage, concept cars held an irreplaceable central role. They were a sophisticated, sometimes fantastical blend of designers, limitless imagination, and rising consumerism. These dream cars were essentially colorful snapshots of how America viewed itself in the next 20 or 30 years. They were physical proof that, for Americans, anything was possible. Whenever a car show was held, thousands of people flocked to it, jostling to catch a glimpse of the magnificent concept cars with titanium bodies or bubble tops. For the public, these new designs represented an experience of the future, a chance to touch the impossible. Ironically, most of the boldest and strangest concept cars of the 50s were later destroyed or disappeared entirely, sometimes existing only as fleeting dreams. But fortunately, a few survived, becoming historical witnesses. Among all the grandiose concept cars of the time, none left a deeper or more unforgettable impression than General Motors' colossal machine. This vehicle was an extraordinary fusion of heavy mechanical engineering and advanced Art Deco styling, designed by the legend Harley Earl. Its dimensions, 33 feet long, 8 feet wide, and over 11 feet tall, along with its weight of over 12 tons, approximate, made anyone who witnessed it exclaim, "Wow!" It was a machine that, when rolling into town, made its driver feel like the big man in the neighborhood. Although there were other cars considered the most eccentric concept cars, the 1953 GM Futureliner belonged to an entirely different class. It was unlike any vehicle ever seen, and interestingly, it wasn't even a traditional automobile in the conventional sense. More importantly, unlike the majority of concept products that only existed as a single unit, GM built an entire fleet. Seeing just one such vehicle was astonishing enough, but seeing a convoy of 12 rolling into town together was a truly unbelievable experience. A powerful affirmation of GM's unlimited belief in the future and technological progress. Initially, Futureliner No. 10, which displayed opportunities for youth, was sold to musician Vic Hyde. It was then sold to the Goebel Brewing Company in Detroit, where it was refurbished and used as the Land Cruiser to promote Goebel beer at community events in Michigan, and even New Orleans in the late 1950s. The interesting story is that Frank Fry, the first driver of the Goebel Futureliner, once had to pour several cans of beer into the radiator when the engine leaked and overheated, just to make it to the next service point in time. After Goebel ceased the program around 1960 due to financial difficulties, the vehicle was sold to Polta Construction. When Jack Fry, Frank's brother, drove it down to Florida to promote a construction project, the engine broke, spitting out a connecting rod and catching fire near Perry, Florida. The vehicle was towed to the Polk construction site and abandoned there. It then passed through the hands of a Cadillac dealer and was finally rescued by Joe Bortz. Futureliner No. 10 was severely degraded, sitting outdoors, rusted, and in terrible condition. In 1993, Joe Bortz, who had saved 5 Futureliners from being turned into restaurants, donated Unit Number 10 to the National Automotive and Truck Museum, NATMUS, in Auburn, Indiana. However, the museum lacked sufficient funds for restoration. Everything changed around 1993 to 1994, when Don Mayton saw the vehicle at the NatMus Museum and decided that restoring it would be a major and worthwhile challenge. He was a man who had dedicated his life to automobiles and longed for a grand challenge. Mayton led a team of volunteers in the West Michigan area, beginning the restoration work in late 1998. The process lasted approximately 7 years. It was more than just repainting or engine repair. The vehicle needed to be disassembled piece by piece. The roof was so heavily rusted that it was unsafe to walk on. Former drivers also recalled that the original roof was very weak, and when all the large display panels were opened, the roof sagged, making it extremely difficult to close the 16-foot-long display doors, sometimes requiring 10 people to push. GM engineers had to redesign the roof structure to fix this flaw, and a new, stronger roof was manufactured. The restoration project required the participation of about 20 specialists from various fields: electricians, painters, welders, and body restoration experts. With the help of donations, volunteer efforts, and new parts, including a new set of tires that were custom molded with the exact embossed logo, Futureliner Number 10 was completed. Terrible speed and visibility. The Futureliner was designed to advertise General Motors' technological progress, but it was not built to demonstrate speed. Contrary to its futuristic and aerodynamic appearance, the actual travel speed of this 13-ton machine on the road was a disappointment for the drivers. Drivers clearly described this inconvenience. On flat roads, this gigantic truck could only manage about 30 to 35 miles per hour in Bopao. Although the 302 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine produced 145 horsepower, pulling the 33,000-pound mass made the vehicle sluggish. On slopes, the situation worsened considerably. When the Futureliner started climbing a hill, its speed could drop to just 10 miles per hour. Imagine the traffic obstruction and the patience required to drive a convoy of 12 such slow vehicles across the road networks of the US and Canada. Ironically, when driving downhill, the vehicle could reach quite alarming speeds. Those behind the wheel still remember it could hit 80 miles per hour downhill, an undesirable speed for a vehicle designed with the balance and braking systems of the 1950s. The original top speed of the 4-cylinder diesel drivetrain before 1953 was about 40 miles per hour, 64 kilometers per hour, indicating that the 1953 version, despite having a stronger gasoline engine, was still limited in terms of acceleration and maintaining speed. Besides the speed issue, visibility was another serious challenge for the drivers. Although the cockpit was towering, offering a panoramic distant view, the driver faced severe difficulty seeing the road surface immediately in front of the vehicle. The unique design of the central cockpit, with the seating position 10 feet above the road, inadvertently created a large blind spot right in front of the nose of the truck. To compensate for this blind spot, drivers were forced to constantly look far ahead. They had to look approximately 20 to 30 yards ahead to anticipate obstacles or traffic situations, because if something appeared immediately close to the front of the vehicle, they would not be able to see it in time. This made driving in heavy traffic in the city, or while parading through small towns, extremely dangerous and stressful. Clearly, the Futureliner was a fantastic show vehicle, but a terrible transportation vehicle. It was designed to attract attention from the outside, not to provide comfort or optimal performance for the operators, who had to face a horrifying job driving these slow, cumbersome, and limited visibility machines across thousands of miles of American roads. If you or a relative ever had the chance to witness the Futureliner convoy at the Parade of Progress, please let us know in which city it took place and what impressed you the most about these colossal vehicles. The air conditioning system that never worked. The 1953 version of the Futureliner was redesigned to fix some major problems of the 1940 version, especially related to driver difficulty. A notable difference between the two generations of Futureliners was the cockpit design. The early Futureliner versions were said to have a transparent canopy over the cockpit, very similar to the cockpit canopy of a P-51 Mustang fighter jet. Although this bubble roof offered a spectacular view, it created a terrible heat problem. It turned the cockpit into a mobile greenhouse. Since the vehicle was not equipped with air conditioning, the temperature in that towering cockpit became unbearably hot. This effectively ended the initial tour of the 1940 version. When GM refurbished the fleet to revive the Parade of Progress in 1953, they made several key changes to improve driving conditions. The two main changes were replacing the diesel engine with a more powerful six-cylinder gasoline engine, and most importantly, replacing the transparent canopy with a fixed metal roof. The purpose of the metal roof was to shield the driver from high temperatures. Along with the metal roof, GM also claimed to have installed an air conditioning system in the cockpit, with units manufactured by Frigidaire. The installation of AC was intended to reduce heat and make the drivers more comfortable during the multi-year cross-continental tour. However, accounts from former drivers paint a completely different picture of the effectiveness of these improvements. One former driver had to climb into the towering cockpit and confirm that the vehicle had air conditioning. But according to their own accounts, this air conditioning system never worked. This failure to cool the cockpit made the already strenuous job of controlling the 13-ton future liner even more agonizing. The drivers not only had to grapple with the 13-ton vehicle, the weak engine, poor visibility, and slow speed, but also had to endure terrible heat in a closed space, 10 feet above the road, under the direct American sun. This seemingly minor technical failure is deeply symbolic. GM was promoting the most advanced technologies of the future, but couldn't make a basic air conditioning system work effectively in the very vehicle representing that progress. It emphasizes that the future liner was a machine prioritized for presentation over practicality. Ironic death by progress itself. The Parade of Progress was spectacularly revived in 1953, bringing a wave of optimism about the future. However, after only 3 years in operation, the program was forced to shut down, ending the tour forever in 1956. The most ironic and bitter cause for the Parade of Progress's termination came from the very concept it promoted, progress. The killer of this spectacular outdoor traveling show was an emerging technology that the future liners themselves had once exhibited as a future marvel: television. In the 1950s, network TV exploded dramatically and quickly became the dominant new technology for entertainment and information. As TV became common, people no longer needed to leave their homes to see General Motors' technological wonders. Instead of having to drive to the town square to watch the future liner display a microwave oven, they could sit right in their living rooms to watch advertisements and educational programs about new technology. The drivers shared poignantly, the Parade of Progress was actually killed by American progress. New technology replaced and undermined older technology and eclipsed outdoor touring and entertainment programs. The decision to stop the parade was made around 1956 or 1957 in Portland, Oregon. The TV boom destroyed outdoor cinema and similar forms of entertainment. When GM noticed a sharp decrease in the audience attending their live performances, they knew that this mobile marketing strategy was obsolete. The program's end brought deep disappointment to the participants. One member of the convoy said he felt disappointed that other young men would no longer have the chance to travel the country and talk to people about these wonderful scientific and engineering utilities. The Parade of Progress, the program that brought the future to every corner of America, ultimately became a victim of that very future. After the program stopped, the 11 remaining future liners entered a new, precarious life. They were sold or donated to various interested parties. Some were sold to the Michigan State Police. Another was sold to Pastor Oral Roberts. Future liner number 10 was purchased by the Goebel Brewing Company for advertising. One was even painted with the Cadillac logo and positioned roadside as a mobile billboard. Unfortunately, most of them fell into poor condition, some being sent straight to the scrap heap. The Parade of Progress, once a source of inspiration, now survived only in memory. If this video stirred up good memories, hit the hype button. Your support helps nostalgic content like this live on. Extraordinary survival and 7 years of restoration. Pioneering mobile technology exhibition. The future liner convoy, with its fleet of 12 colossal units, did not carry soldiers or supplies. Each future liner was an independent mobile exhibit hall, like a miniature museum, designed to showcase a single technological theme. This was the core aspect that made these vehicles pioneering. In the 1950s, installing such complex and large technologies in a mobile, self-operating space was an engineering marvel. Each future liner was equipped with a self-opening stage and a prominent light tower that could be deployed from the roof, turning any town square into a modern exhibition venue. The future liner convoy delivered a sneak peek into what was coming in America's future. The exhibited topics were diverse and groundbreaking for the time. Think about things we take for granted today, but in the mid-1950s they were science fiction to many people. Some notable artifacts included stereo sound waves, displaying stereo sound technology. Future liner number 10, for example, exhibited three-dimensional sound, where sound was bounced from speaker to speaker, to simulate early spatial audio. Microwave ovens, a revolutionary cooking technology. Automatic transmissions, illustrating advancements in automotive powertrains. Engine technology, various engine types including the jet engine. Future liner number 3 displayed power for the air age, featuring a cutaway model of an Allison J35 jet engine. Agricultural technology, future liner number 8 exhibited around the farmhouse clock, focusing on the use of modern appliances on the farm. TV and traffic, exhibits also included topics on television, traffic engineering, and the management of highway and urban congestion. The importance of these vehicles lay in bringing these technologies out of secret laboratories and directly to consumers, helping them familiarize themselves with innovations that would soon become part of everyday life. Future liner. Number 10, the vehicle currently displayed at the NatMos Museum, is a prime example of a dual-feature display. On the left side, it showcased the three-dimensional sound demonstration. On the right side, it exhibited opportunities for youth. This exhibit was GM's contribution to sparking youth interest in ingenuity and creativity, promoting the Fisher Body Craftsman Guild Model Car Competition, where students had the chance to win scholarships. The convoy created a successful promotional program because it resembled a free science and engineering course held on the streets of America. In this way, GM positioned itself not only as an automaker but also as a leader in thought and innovation, encouraging a generation to take an interest in science and technology. Once again, the future liners were truly mobile exhibit halls containing the future. Among the groundbreaking technologies GM introduced, which one truly changed your family's daily life? Share those memories in the comments section. A complete fleet of 12. In the world of 1950s concept cars, the nearly unwritten rule was to create only a single vehicle, a prototype, a dream car to draw crowds at major exhibitions. But General Motors, with its vision and scale, did not follow that rule. Instead of producing just one single GM future liner, GM built a complete fleet of up to 12 of these colossal vehicles. This decision elevated the Parade of Progress from a conventional mobile exhibit to an unbelievable event, a truly phenomenal motorcade. Imagine the scale and complexity of manufacturing 12 custom vehicles of extreme size, each 33 feet long, 8 feet wide, and over 11 feet tall. The approximate weight of 13 tons, 33,000 pounds, for each future liner was a massive engineering challenge. But multiplying that number by 12 demonstrates GM's serious investment and large bet on this mobile marketing program. Seeing a convoy of 12 colossal future liners, painted deep red with distinctive Art Deco white roofs, rolling into a small American town created an all-encompassing visual impact wherever they went. Local residents who might never have had access to major technology exhibits in urban centers suddenly saw their future driving straight toward them. This convoy was considered mobile architecture, with each vehicle serving as an independent exhibition pavilion featuring various technological artifacts. Although 12 units were initially built for the 1941 Parade of Progress and subsequently refurbished for the 1953 tour, their later history is quite tragic. Unfortunately, one of the 12 future liners was completely destroyed in an accident in 1956, just before the program was discontinued. That left only 11. As of 2007, automotive historians have only confirmed that 9 units survived, although the condition and precise location of some remain a mystery. Even now, 2 future liners still have not been clearly located or identified. The existence of such a large fleet also created complexity in identifying the history of each specific unit. For instance, future liner number 1, which exhibited miracles of heat and cold featuring Frigidaire, currently has an unknown whereabouts. Number 2, which displayed Our American Crossroads, had its artifacts retained by GM, but the vehicle itself disappeared. Number 11, displaying March of Tools, is the one that was sold for a record price of $4 million twice at Barrett-Jackson, once in 2006 and again in 2015. The disguised marketing strategy. General Motors was selling a philosophy, a vision of the future, and they achieved this through a masterful marketing strategy. Clever promotion disguised as education. This was a unique idea in the automotive world, almost unprecedented at the time. The main goal of the Parade of Progress was to advertise and promote GM's products, but they achieved this by not directly selling. Instead, they brought a free program to the residents of every city and town they visited. People did not have to pay to admire these groundbreaking technologies or the colossal future liner vehicles. The free admission eliminated the financial barrier and encouraged everyone to flock to the event, turning it into a major community festival. However, the educational element was the core of this strategy. GM invested heavily in positioning the Parade of Progress as a public educational effort. The program was run by 50 college graduates who were knowledgeable about the exhibits and capable of communicating complex scientific concepts in an understandable way. The use of college students as docents further enhanced the academic and credible nature of the program. A crucial part of this educational effort were programs aimed at engaging youth. GM sought to attract and encourage students to pursue careers in science and engineering. The culmination of this effort was the program where students had the opportunity to win 4-year scholarships. By linking the General Motors brand with education, science, and opportunities for the future, GM quickly generated tremendous community goodwill, while also building potential brand loyalty in the next generation of scientists, engineers, and consumers. This was a way for GM to demonstrate its commitment to developing domestic talent and fostering innovation. In essence, GM used the Futureliner as a massive PR tool. Frank Fry, a former driver of Futureliner No. 10, which was later sold to the Goebel Brewing Company, recalled that the vehicle was called the Goebel Land Cruiser, advertised as a new concept in public relations. Similarly, the Parade of Progress was a public relations effort on a national scale. By acting as educators and inspirers, GM built a positive brand image that transcended traditional product advertising campaigns, ensuring that the General Motors name was associated with progress in the minds of Americans. This strategy was extremely effective and one of the most unique aspects of the entire Futureliner project, reaching people from the horse and buggy era. One of the most important factors that made the Parade of Progress a social phenomenon was its geographic distribution strategy. In the early and mid-1950s, large, spectacular auto shows were usually held only in major metropolitan centers, catering to the privileged and affluent populations of large cities. GM realized that to truly create a nationwide impact and build a broad customer base, they needed to reach small-town USA, the smaller towns and communities across America, where advanced technology was still a distant concept. This was a deeply democratic marketing strategy. GM drove the Parade of Progress, consisting of 12 Futureliners and 32 supporting vehicles, across a route of about 150 stops throughout the United States and Canada. This meant they brought the wonders of technology and engineering directly to people who might still have been living in the horse and buggy era. For these individuals, seeing a vehicle 33 feet long, over 11 feet tall, with automatic lighting towers extending from the roof, displaying things like microwave ovens or automatic transmissions, was a genuinely alien experience. Former drivers of the vehicle emotionally shared that you have to remember that some of these folks came from the horse and buggy days, and to see something this advanced was astonishing. It was more than a performance. This educational and entertaining community event left a lifelong impression on local residents. This strategy provided GM with something priceless: precious face time with millions of potential customers. When the Parade of Progress convoy rolled into town, all other activities seemed to stop. The Futureliners would be parked, the side display panels opened, and the speakers, college graduates in GM uniforms, would stand at their posts to introduce and promote the products. The GM uniforms, with their professional style and badges, further reinforced the company's image as a representative of progress and innovation. Every Futureliner trip turned into an unforgettable event. GM's willingness to bring its most expensive and complex technologies to remote areas, places where competitors never thought to go, built an unprecedented level of goodwill and brand awareness. This was an extensive, ahead-of-its-time marketing tactic, utilizing the scale and visual impression of the Futureliner to create a lasting imprint in the American mind of General Motors as the pioneer of the future. In this way, GM exhibited technology and affirmed its commitment to bringing the future closer to every American citizen. The driver's terrifying challenge. From the outside, the Futureliner was a masterpiece, an icon of progress. But for the 50 college graduates hired to drive these machines, the driving experience was a nightmare of engineering and logistics. First, let's talk about size and weight. This colossal vehicle was 33 feet long, 11 feet 7 inches tall, and 8 feet wide, with a curb weight of approximately 33,000 pounds, or about 15 metric tons. Driving a large truck is difficult enough, but driving a 13-ton custom concept vehicle designed for display rather than long-distance travel was exponentially harder. To withstand this heavy load, GM had to add strength to the front wheels. A rare technical feature of the Futureliner was that, in addition to the rear wheels, the front wheels were also duals. This was necessary to ensure durability and load-bearing capacity, as well as to carry all the luggage and display equipment. Mechanically, this machine was not equipped with a powerful engine by modern truck standards. When the program was revived in 1953, the Futureliners were refurbished and equipped with a GMC 302 cubic-inch 4.95-liter inline six-cylinder gasoline engine, rated at 145 horsepower. Imagine such a small engine with a 7.5-to-1 compression ratio, having to pull a mass of 13 tons. Although it featured a 4-speed hydromatic automatic transmission combined with a 2-speed manual transmission installed in 1953, moving that huge mass remained an immense challenge. The cockpit was also a unique experience. The driver had to climb into a central control position, towering high at the front of the vehicle. The driver's eye level was about 10 feet above the road surface, providing a commanding view. However, controlling the vehicle from that height came with other problems, especially regarding close-range visibility. Driving the Futureliner was not an easy honor, but a strenuous and tiring job, demanding high concentration and physical stamina to cope with the enormous weight and limited power of the six-cylinder engine. It's not a bus, it's a marketing tool. When you first see the Futureliner with its massive body, Art Deco aerodynamic design, and towering cockpit, your first thought might be that General Motors was secretly testing a revolutionary public transportation system. Perhaps this was a bold attempt to enter the world of future mass passenger transport, but the actual answer is far more shocking and intriguing. These colossal vehicles, 33 feet long and weighing 13 tons, were never designed to carry people or test new passenger transport technology. The sole and absolute purpose of the Futureliner was marketing. They were built specifically for an ambitious and iconic GM project called the Parade of Progress. This program, originating in 1936 and revived after World War II in 1953, had a simple yet incredibly effective mission: to promote General Motors' latest products and bring them directly to the American public, especially those living in small towns where large exhibitions could not reach. The unofficial slogan of this convoy could be summarized as "Seeing is believing." In that era, before network television became commonplace, the best way for GM to generate national buzz and change public perception was through spectacular live events. The Futureliner achieved this brilliantly. When the convoy of 12 vehicles rolled into a small town, it quickly became a phenomenal event. A former driver said that when driving this vehicle, you felt like the big man in the neighborhood, and when it rolled into town, you couldn't deny the attention it generated. The Futureliners were meticulously designed mobile exhibit halls, each carrying a separate display theme, much like a miniature stage. They were equipped with large chrome side panels that could open to reveal the technological displays and artifacts inside. They did not carry soldiers, nor did they carry passengers. They carried only progress. GM's goal was to create a free, engaging event that attracted all social strata to witness the wonders of science and engineering. In this way, GM was executing an incredibly clever advertising strategy, perfectly disguised as education and entertainment. They weren't just selling cars, they were selling the idea of a better future, a future powered by General Motors. The colossal vehicle, over 11 feet tall, painted deep red and bright white, acted as an irresistible attention magnet, ensuring that GM's advertising message would be received wherever it went. The convoy was also supported by 32 other vehicles and driven by 50 college graduates, who simultaneously served as docents, presenters at the exhibitions. This further emphasized the educational element and the seriousness of the program. The Futureliner was not a bus, it was a mobile propaganda machine, a technology ambassador across 150 stops around the United States and Canada. Thank you for joining me in revisiting a brilliant era of the American auto industry and reliving those beautiful memories. Do not forget to like and subscribe to Back to Yesterday, so you do not miss the next nostalgic stories. See you on the paths of memory ahead.